by going to YouTube custom streaming service. Alrighty, and away we go. It's that kind of a day. Hey everybody, welcome to The Wrong End of the Snake. It is a webcast about audio, touring, and the relationships we have built between our road families. Tater and I have had an 18-year relationship on The Wrong End of the Snake with bands like Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, Slash, Stone Temple Pilots, Prophets of Rage, Iron Maiden, and most notably 10 years with Linkin Park. My co-host, Kevin Tater McCarthy, is a world-class monitor engineer with over 30 years in the business. I'm very proud to call him my friend. He has 9 Top Dog Monitor Engineer of the Year awards and 2 Parnelli Monitor Engineer of the Year awards. I'm Ken Van Druten, aka Pooch. I am a front-of-house engineer with 3 decades in the music industry. I'm a 3-time Grammy-nominated recording engineer, and I have 8 Top Dog Front-of-House Engineer of the Year awards. I'm also a winner of the Parnelli Front-of-House Engineer of the Year award. Let's do a little housekeeping. Please use the chat window of the Zoom app to communicate amongst yourselves. If you are streaming from our YouTube channel and you want to be able to ask questions of our guests, register to be on the Zoom call for future episodes. Links to register are in all of our social media. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom app. and we'll answer as many questions as possible during the hour, and then answer any leftover questions in our Q&A overtime episode. Look for that to be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the next few days. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to visit our social media, which is YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Wrong End of the Snake. Tater, why don't you tell us about our guests this week?
All right. Today we have Buford Jones. Buford's toured in excess of 47 years with artists such as Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Eric Clapton, ZZ Top, Linda Ronstadt, just to name 5. Buford began his career touring for Showco, where he stayed for 10 years before becoming an independent contractor. Meyer Sound asked Buford to help introduce new products to their customers, which he did for over 15 years, and more recently has taught classes on the art of mixing. Please welcome world-renowned, legendary audio mixer, Buford Jones.
Nice, all of you out there. Wow, great response.
A lot of folks out there. Hey, Buford, how are you?
I'm doing great. I told my doctor that I was really doing good. He said, "Don't worry about that. You'll get over it." Okay, well, good. I wouldn't want to catch that sort of thing. So
I guess we're having a little technical.
good.
We're having a little technical difficulty with your camera there, but that's all right as long as we can hear you.
Yeah.
And as long as I've got my hand, I get this over the viewfinder, over the monitor screen. The monitor screen. Not the
Wow, weird.
and then it comes in, and the minute I let go, well, then it fades out. Wow. Of all time.
Fade to black.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll just deal with it. We aren't going to
Yeah.
see your pretty face.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah. It's like the space station flying over. It won't wait for you. You got to get out and do it, or you miss it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we can hear you good.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Hey, you're a legend, Buford, and the artists that you've worked for are amazing. And this particular webinar and webcast is about relationships and kind of helping younger engineers to understand maybe how you got to where you are and got to be able to work with all those amazing artists. So can we start at the beginning a little bit? Like, how did you get into becoming a mixer? And, did it start in your childhood? Were you a musician, or what started it all?
It did start when I was a child, and I'm very sorry about this. But anyway, the screen. My dad bought me a Heathkit tube radio when
Nice.
I was about 10, and I put this thing together, and I was so fascinated that I assembled this thing and it worked and it did something. It wasn't that I was starving for music. It's just wow, this is a bunch of electronics, and put it all together and it does something. And I did that and been hooked ever since. Ever since. It seems like even when I put the thing together that I tore it apart again and put it back together again to see
That's
if I
awesome.
could do it. I was fascinated with it. So that fascination with electronics, I got to blame on my dad, but it was a good thing, and I've just been involved with it ever since. I got my college education in electronics, and then I play. So I play guitar. I struggle at it because my dad, again, I got to blame him again. He, as a hobby for a long time, but then he went into it full time when he retired, built guitars and built pedal steels. And so I was raised with instruments all around me. And when I was 14, I finally picked one of them up and started picking around on it. And my dad and I would jam, and that was some of the best moments. I'm just going to let this go dark for a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah.
because every time you lean forward, we can't hear you because of the
Lose your
pattern of
mic,
the
yeah.
microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we would jam, and that was definitely a strong part of it because I just love to play, and that drew me in, I think, more than anything versus other guys. It wasn't like I I just wanted to play music, and but I had a lot of starving musician friends, and so I don't know. At the same time, I was going, would this be successful or not? But really, success didn't have anything to do with it at that time. It was just it's desire. So I wanted to play, and that's what it was. So I went to school and got a degree in electronics. Stepped out and was working for two different places. One called Controlling Computing Devices that did just that. And they made they got projects spawned off of Texas Instruments, and they would build these really fascinating electronic products. And then I was repairing stereos on the other side of it. So here, staying the same, one hand with a soldering iron, the other hand with just curiosity beyond myself. And then, somebody come up to me and said, "Hey, we got some friends down the road." This has been in 1970, 71, 70. Yeah, I can't really recall the exact dates back then. But anyway, told me that I needed to go to this place and talk to them. Pretty much talk to them about work. And I says, "What do they do?" And he says, "Well, right down the street, when you take a lunch, just go down and visit them." Well, that place to go down and visit was Showco. And I did not know the word. I did not know what they did. I knew nothing about it. I go walking in the door, and the three owners, Jack Calmes, Jack Maxson, and Rusty Boucher, they all three sat down and interviewed me. This is when they were on Motorcircle, and it was real Motorcircle Streets near Parkland Hospital. And
yeah, not Regal Row yet.
Right, they hadn't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
And so I walked in, and they did the interview, and they were asking me, "You have a college education?" "Yes, sir." "That's good." "Okay." "And you play music?" "Yeah, that's good." And you got a little studio at home?" "So good. You're a tweaker?" And yeah, And then they wanted to know, was I single? And I said, "What in the world has that got to do with anything?" And then a year later, after I took the job, I found out what that meant. And that was meaning that we're going to send you on the road with a big box of Tide, and you'll and a big suitcase, and you won't be home for very much time. And that was indeed the case. I think the first year I was at Showco, I think I was out 11 months, 10 and a half to 11 months the first year. And to say the first gig, what happened is after I accepted this, because I was making more money than repairing the stereos, and I had said, or they had told me to come into work the next morning, which I did. And I was soldering a snake and connectors on the snake, belt and 27 pair, what have you. Went to lunch, came back from lunch, and then Jack Maxson walked in the same room. Day one, Jack Maxson walks in the same room and says, "Hey, go home, pack your bags, come back down here, load up this truck, and you'll be driving it to Atlanta tonight, and you'll be on the Three Dog Night tour."
Wow.
And I said, "Three Dog Night? That's a big band." I've heard of them. Yeah. We're going to go work with them. Listen, I still had not figured out exactly what this company does. I saw some big speakers there in the shop, and I was going like, man, I'd sure like to play my guitar through those things. And but anyway, here I'm on the road in day two, headed to Atlanta, and that was my first gig to walk into. Three Dog Night playing Fulton County Stadium. And
wow.
And we had both of Showco's sound systems. They had just built the second one, and what we call a system at that time. So we had taken the second one down there, the one met us there through some other location, get there, and set up both these sound systems and did the stadium gig. And there it was. So Three Dog at that time only went out on the weekends, sort of like the Weekend Warrior thing in country music. But they just had enough money. They didn't have to worry about being gone all week. They just go out and play 3 gigs on the weekend, go back to LA. And in between going back to LA, that means that would leave us out on the road somewhere. And then we pick up the phone and call Showco because we didn't have our cell phones, and pick up our cell phone and go like, okay, now drive to Oklahoma City and you'll work with Guess Who, do this Guess Who gig. Okay. So we do that gig and call them up. Now go up to Denver, Colorado and do It's a Beautiful Day. Okay. Go do that. And then go off, and then it's, whoever. They just kept coming up. These are multi-platinum artists that at that time in 71, carrying production was just something that was kind of beginning to become the norm. So a lot of these groups obviously used individual, sound systems, local sound systems as they travel, and whatever the promoter provides is what you got.
Right.
Now, so we were contracted obviously from a lot of promoters and to do these gigs, but they just pop up to us like that. Literally, it got to where after that first year, I learned to stop calling home, and I think there's once or twice I might have just drove home, and I figured this is the only way I'm gonna get to see my mail or anything, and then they'd say, well, why didn't you call in? I says, well, I did. The line was busy. That old dog didn't hunt. That didn't go over too well. And, but no, it was all good. But that's a rare and really different way of entering the business. But once I saw what was going on, it came to me very quickly. And Showco made all their systems where it's foolproof to hook up. I mean, it was very simple, and by pin number and sex, you couldn't plug it in wrong. I remember stage calls at 1 in the afternoon. I think Three Dog Night stage calls were 1 in the afternoon. And, we'd have the sound system up in an hour and then have an hour to sit around and waiting for the band to come down.
Wow.
And Buford, were those gold rack mount mixers at that time?
Yes. Funny enough, I don't think we ever gave them a name. They deserve a name. Yeah. But they were upright rotary mixers. They were designed from an All-Tech design. I forget the number. Y'all may not. That was blue, kind of a blue-green. Huh. And so Showco got the right from them, whatever they needed to do, the copyright, whatever. And they just modified and then manufactured those right in the shop. So they were building them as fast as they could put those mixers together. And that was a big deal to have, 4 or 6 channel mixers. Wow, look here, I got 24 channels. But then that seemed like a lot. You didn't have anything to compare it to.
Yep.
And it was real solid. I hear a lot of chat from some people who's been in it a long time and say, sound systems weren't that good back then. Well, they've changed a lot, certainly, and we have more precision in our sound systems and where we're covering and how many people we're covering properly and all of that. But no, I'll tell you what, and what else I was doing in between Three Dog Night was taking additional gear to Led Zeppelin. Now, I didn't do Rusty Boucher mix Zeppelin. I would sit with him a lot of times, and then I would just sit through the show, really, and then tear down the PA, put it in the truck, go somewhere else. And the nights they were coming on, even though I was young and really didn't know what was going on, I'll tell you what, I was mesmerized. I was man. I can't tell you what it was like when the house lights went down and Zeppelin was about to come on stage. I cannot put it into words. It's just something that you're sitting there just stunned, maybe stoned too, but either way, stunned and stoned. Either way, the energy was unmeasurable and,
totally.
and just incredible moments.
And was Jack Maxon mixing Three Dog Night at the time?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. Okay.
And he later handed it down to me. And
oh, he did.
Yeah, he did. He kind of wanted to get off the road. He was doing a couple other things, and as kind of the lay of the land, I guess, as far as my entrance into Showco and as a mixer too that I became, but was Jack and Rusty, of course, would get the whatever call, whatever it was that came in the door. And if they were busy, well, then it got to me. I'd be the next one, So that was gigs like David Bowie. That was gigs like ZZ Top. That was gigs like, I guess for whatever reason they were busy and here before you will do this one. Okay. And it's just amazing when I look back on my career that all of the acts that I was exposed to and worked with, I dug their music. It wasn't like I had to go out and just slave. Well, we did slave through it, but I mean, just not really enjoy what I was doing. That 1 hour of showtime was just priceless, or 2 hours of showtime. I often said that it was the other 22 hours of the day that was hard for me to deal with.
For sure.
Do the shows free. They pay me to do all the travel.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was a learning experience for me. And at the same time, I was soaking it in. And I think within a year, I was already trying to figure out ways to, I was just a stereo maniac. I've always been a multi-channel type of a guy. And, I was trying to, mono just didn't make sense to me. I mean, it made sense to me what people use the reason for doing it. Well, everybody needs to hear the same thing. Yeah, I guess so. Well, then if that's the case, well, then there shouldn't even be a home stereo market, because that would mean that for you to enjoy your $5,000 serious investment in stereo equipment, you can only sit in one chair in your room where it's optimized, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now, if you vary off 6 inches to the left, hey, you're out of the field. So take that system back and get something else. Go
It's
get
like
a mono.
that old Maxwell commercial, guy with his hair blown back.
Yeah, the guy blowing back. That was me for sure. Yeah. And so I always just dug playing with new stuff.
So were you one of the first to start pushing the stereo in the live sound field then?
Yes, I did. I'm pretty sure I was, because I know I wasn't Showco, because I would take one of those early versions of the mixers that you described earlier, which the first one just had a big rotary knob for volume and then bass and treble.
Nice.
That's it. Models that I saw came in there after we added input trim. So before the input trims, we'd have to carry their shoebox of Shure attenuators, 10 dB, 20 dB attenuators. Yeah. So if the signal was too hot coming from the stage, you just had to go in the back and plug in these attenuators to get the right level down. So it was lovely to see input attenuators built in, and then they made me, if I'm not wrong, I'll tell you what, it would have to be one of the few, but made it in a stereo version that had a pan pot on it. I was taking 2 of the regular mixers, or 4, and I was doing this a lot of Skinner, I think, and where I would send 2 aux signals, which is all I had. It had 2 aux ins, and that's it, and the later ones, and I would send one of them to the left PA and the other one to the right. So I'm actually mixing off the sends just to get separation. In the PA, I had to get 2 crossovers. That wasn't too hard to do at that time. And so I get the 2 crossovers and hook it all up that way. I didn't ask for permission, or, if that was a Showco standard or Showco way, but nobody resisted. And so, I was probably doing that in 72.
Wow.
So I was just more fascinated in hearing separation and things. And I will strongly argue the point with anyone that's when we're talking about equal coverage throughout the room. I think I always had the philosophy that, well, I know that physics, we're not going to conquer physics in our lifetime, and I doubt if any other future generation's lifetime. And, we strive for the perfect hearing seat, the best seat we can hear from everywhere in the room, and it just doesn't occur. But it's like we still strive to get the best we can to all spots. But I'm going prime real estate, down on the floor, that's paid the most money for their tickets, stood in line the longest. They deserve extra bit of excitement with the gig. And I think Pink Floyd pretty much felt their way because, you know, I inherited that surround sound system and it was incredible. Is the layout of it. I did the consoles and all the outboard gear, but the layout of it. And so that to me, I think was they seemed like that was just part of their sound. That's part of their show, that it's in surround. And nobody questions, of course, the delay factor and time alignment. If those, whatever, 20,000 in the middle are getting a spectacular sound and the rest are getting, it's still good. First time I saw Pink Floyd, I saw him do The Wall. I went with Greg Ladani, who's a Grammy producer for Toto and Stevie Nicks and others, and we went to see him at the LA Sports Arena. We sat back in the floor, or just a seat or a row or two up on the rear of the room and to the left. And I remember my impression at that time was not so much, you know, I'm not using my background and sound and sitting here and analyze and criticize this show. I just sat there and was once again mesmerized. It was just all of what's going on around me. Just what's going to happen next? You know, what's going to come from where? And that's what made it extremely fascinating and entertaining. So I think Pink Floyd, if they ever did go out again, which looks very slim, but if they did, it would be in the surround. And it's just part of their signature. But it wasn't, oddly enough, the first tour that I did in surround. The first one I did was David Bowie.
Oh, wow.
And that was 74.
Wow.
I think it's 74. Jim Barnhurst had just built, this is the same Jim Barnhurst that made the Very Light.
Very Light, yep.
He also made the first 3-band parametric desk. It's called the Showco Superboard.
Superboard, yep.
Superboard.
Okay, there ended up being, I think, about 10 of them. And so what a thrill that was to sit down to that console. And it had joystick panners on the subgroups.
Yeah.
Not on the individual channels now, and nor could you select. I mean, it's straight up analog, of course, but the groups, 8 groups that it had, each had a joystick on it. And so, I eat that up. I don't think any of the other engineers ever bothered. I can't think of any engineer that used it at Showco that did it in surround. Not to say it wasn't done, but it just wasn't the norm. It's like, you know, and I'll say this too about the surround stereo thing. I really won't mention the name, even though I have tremendous respect for him. And I don't mean this to sound demeaning. We're going back in time, but going out with a rock band that had several guitars, and I had put together this mixer that I was talking about that had stereo pan pots on it. And I was telling the engineer that was mixing the show, the first few years I didn't mix that much, and then it became pretty much standard. But I was excited. I told the engineer when I got there, I says, look, man, this mixture has pan pots on it. You can put this guitar over here and you can put that guitar over there. You know, wow, cool. Can't wait. You know, and he goes, hey, Buford, this band is not into special effects.
Wow.
Oh, well, okay.
Okay.
We'll just put a little tape over those pan pots and we just get that fixed right away. So, yeah, we're not into special effects here. But it was a thing, and an argument that went on for quite some time. But
so, quick question though. My first concert I think was 76 or 77, but 71, 72, and you're trying to do stereo. Is the promoter? Where's front of house at? Is there a front of house?
Yeah.
You're right. There was not. It was a fight, and I might have been among the first two to really throw a fit about that after time. Yeah, we would be put in entranceways and vomitories or whatever. But, you know, Zeppelin at that time, Rusty Boucher mixed them from the stage behind the stack.
Wow.
And not every tour and not every one, but I remember, doing that. And he did an incredible job doing that. I don't even remember what he monitored with.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So, what was there near fields, or was there a stack of speakers, or?
It would have had to have been I think even full wedges were new at that time. Wow. So I think I really don't recall what it was. He had to have something in the way of a wedge.
Yeah.
Wedges started coming in. Led Zeppelin and Three Dog both were side fills, 2 side fills on each side of the stage. That's it. Nobody had individual monitors, and everything was perfect. Nobody complained about anything. I can't hear about that. So
that's a really, this brings me to a really interesting point. You've seen the beginning of technology, and you guys got away with using so much less than what we use now. And in some ways, we're kind of getting, as good or maybe even better in some situations results. How is that for you as far as technology goes? Like, for instance, you're talking about the, you were one of the first people to use this surround sound system. And now the big thing now in 2020 is the immersive speaker technology that's happening. So what was that transition for you, or what is that constant transition for you where technology keeps advancing? How is that for you?
I just look for that extra thrill. I mean, it's like I want to mix it as well as I can and as close to the record as I can. And then I've always had this, you mentioned it, I remember when you started the podcast here, about the relationship with the artist. So it's things that we, I don't do it alone, and I've always relied on the artist, and I want to do, well, I'll put it this way. I was picked up by a cab driver in New York City, I think around in the mid 70s. And the cab driver is taking me to the hotel, and on the way to the hotel, as they interrogate you, when you fly to New York, and
yes.
Where are you from? What's the pilot like? What plane, and how many kids you got in your family, and all this. And he says, "What are you doing in New York City?" And I said, "I'm here, and I mix live concerts." He says, "Who do you mix?" And I said, "Linda Ronstadt." He goes, "Mama bakes a cake and you serve it." Wow. That
great.
Is incredible. And if I ever get a book written, that will be the name of the book. They bake the cake and I serve it.
That's amazing. And you have to write a book, Buford, because you have, amazing stories.
Yeah.
We've been trying. Gavin Kanan's working with me now, who I worked with at Meyer Sound, and he calls me once every 2 weeks, and we're trying to document these things. I've tried numerous ways over time, and it just seems like after a while, I get tired of it, or not tired, but it never gets completed. And most of it's my fault, I guess, but I've had a lot of very good opportunities. So I am, God willing, I live another year or two, that I'll get something done in that time and document it, because everybody always tells me that it was such an exciting time through rock and roll, and you really gotta document that. And
you have to, because my time, when I first started working, was an exciting time in relation to what I think is now, but your time was the heyday of rock and roll.
The forefront of touring, where it was
the forefront of touring. Yeah.
It really was. I didn't realize it to what extent until this thing is set on a daylight setting, and I don't know how to change the setting, but anyway,
that's all right.
It was such a, everything was a sellout. Everything. I don't remember ever doing a gig where there was an empty seat anywhere. So the industry itself was booming and just booming. And you're asking about, I think, the transition into newer equipment and accepted all of that. And I was right in line with that. I subscribed to every audio magazine that exists, and I actually looked at all of them. And I don't know that I read every article to every word, but it's always fascinating to me. And I was just, once again, very fortunate. Whatever tour I'd be going out on, especially after coming independent, because at Showco it's provided by them. But when I became independent, I pretty much got my choice of what was out there, and I in a way it worked for me. Some others may do it differently, but I didn't show tremendous loyalty to any one company. I mean, while we're out there working, we're a team, we're family. But when that tour is over with, I'm not going to. When I wanted to make a step into being an independent engineer, well, it was just that. I think I traveled so much with Showco. I've got 9 passports, by the way, over
Nice.
the midst of 50 years. And I go like, man, I got to reduce this travel. I just can't. I don't even know where home is. I lived in the back of a Mexican food restaurant.
Nothing wrong with that.
I did for a long time because it's never home,
Yeah.
So,
Now, let me ask you a question before we go too far. Now, you said you didn't necessarily maybe were the first one to do stereo, but you were definitely right there with everybody. Now, also right there with you might not realize, you became an independent engineer kind of well before that whole thing started.
yeah.
And maybe you don't realize it now, but you were maybe at the forefront of that also, because all the engineers used to work for the sound companies, and as you know, and you'd use the sound company where your engineer worked, but you decided to become an independent really when it wasn't a time or really that job title. How did you think of that? And how did Showco react? And how did managements act? Like, why would we hire you? What were they saying, and what was the reaction?
Well, from our point of view, meaning an employee at Showco, and when we would work with a group and they have their mixer provided, it's amazing on how many times these mixers that were provided were long-term friends with the band.
Right.
They weren't necessarily established sound engineers that had a reputation for that.
Right.
You work up as this band is working its success higher and higher and higher, and then dude knows our sound. He's been everywhere and he knows what we're doing, so he'll mix this. But he never said that he's really great at what he does. He just knows our stuff. So I had to watch a few of those, and it was pretty painstaking. One, I mean, I've never worked for a group that wasn't a multi-platinum group, but then one of them, I'll hold off on that name too. It was pretty obviously. He didn't do this all the time. So I asked him, I said, what did you do before you went to work for this big band? He said, I work at the water department in London.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So when they go out, you go out with them. He goes, yeah. And I go, okay, cool. Well, okay. So that's how a lot of them would be there, and a lot would do a good job. But I think until if you have enough experience with the equipment that you're supplied with, well, then, it has its good points and bad. For me, the main point I was wanting to do is cut down the frequency of traveling that I was doing, that I was assigned to doing. It wasn't necessarily that people were calling up and demanding Buford on their tour. I think it might have came to a point where there was a few asked for me, but it was like, I just went out and did it. So, and then we'd make a relationship. And then that relationship, and through the musicians on that, then suddenly here's accounts coming that might not have come to Showco because they've had some past experience. So we know each other. Once again, relationships and how important relationships are. And, I think all the sound companies kind of, had their own stubbornness about the way things should be done. Some of it was right, some of it was wrong. But that established who the sound mixer was. So after we started providing them, Rusty Boucher, saying back again, with Led Zeppelin, I don't remember them ever having anybody coming in mixing Led Zeppelin. It was always Rusty.
Yeah.
And so when he had his first baby, he had me on standby. He says, I have a baby come in. You might have to go out and do this tour of Europe for me. And but it all worked out. He was able to have his baby in and go do the tour. I think I'm getting away from the question again. It's real easy for me
That's
to
all right.
do that.
You're
Just
doing, that's all right.
throw the reel out there and reel me in.
That's all right.
But
No, it's all good.
It's a chancy move that I wanted to do. And me watching these guys, I probably mixed 70% of the groups that I went out with at Showco. And then this other 30%, I'm just noticing, these guys, that's primarily what they do. And, but for that band and I want to do that too. So I was working with Peter Asher, mixing Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor, because he managed both groups. So I was ping-ponging between those two groups through most of the 70s. And then I finally just went up to him one day and says, hey, if I quit Showco and I come to work for you, would you do that and just pay me my salary? And he said, sure, come on. And it was just that easy. So I sat out with Rusty Boucher. I'll always remember that. And it was a pleasant departure. I think Rusty would like to see me hang around, but he said, I well understand what's going on. And so I left 10 years of job security, and here I'll just do this on my own. And it just proved out beneficial for me. I don't know that all individuals do that. One of the biggest hang-ups in being an independent engineer, as y'all know, is, when the tour ends, the paychecks end.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you're scrambling for the next gig. Between gigs is when I'd come in and have a little money stacked up in the bank because you use our per diem out on the road, and those paychecks go right in the bank. Well, where do I go? Right to the music store. I'm buying another tape recorder, microphones, guitar, this and that. And I get back home and playing and jamming and having a great time now that I'm home. And then I hear the phone rings. And then so-and-so is going out. I never had a resume in 80 and 90, all through the 80s and all through the 90s. And of course didn't in the 70s because I was working. So I didn't have a resume. And the phone would just ring. I just it's to a point where I kind of didn't want to go out, but at the same time I did. And so, yeah, it'd ring and, hey, we're going out on this tour in a month. You want to do it? And, okay. So I'll go out and do it. So the loyalty thing, what I was saying is I could have gone to work maybe for another sound company, but why would I have needed to do that in 1980? Because Showco was he's on the top, in my opinion, and
they were the
Claire Brothers. So what am I going to do? Go to work for Claire just for something different? No, I'll stay at Showco. And then so I just wanted to be independent, and I knew I'd make a lot more money. But the main reason is to be with the band, and I want to talk music. I don't want to talk tech. I knew tech, and I could relate. I wired stuff before I started wiring rock and roll systems, and that wasn't anything difficult for me to do and follow. But no, I wanted to play music. So being with the band, this is my first experience. I think it was roughly 77 that I did my first listen to a show tape with the band, which was highly argumentable at the time. Most engineers said, you can't listen to that stuff. That's not
real quick. What format? What format is cassette?
Cassette.
Cassette. Okay.
Cassette. First thing we listened to would come from a cassette, and it's kind of started off with Bowie. I think 74, and we had a Nakamichi 550 that Showco had given all of us engineers. Y'all remember that machine?
Oh yeah.
It was, so to me, it was kind of a cassette version of the Nagra.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was portable then.
Yeah, a portable.
Yeah.
And so I'd record the shows with it, and then I would, in the truck, put on some headphones. Maybe we were driving the PA all night long. We didn't get into that, but 24-hour work though. And I listened to the show, and I go, wow. Well, wait a minute. Where's the bass? That I heard in the room. Where's the kick drum? The big kick drum, which I was into that stuff then. The howitzer kick drums. I don't know if I ever got into howitzer kick drums, but I got into loud kick drums. But anyway, it wasn't a no-brainer for me to know that even though we did not have proper tuning techniques, we would just do it with a microphone or with a cassette, and we would always put too much low-end energy into the system, even without going into technical terms. And thinking about a flat response or an equal amplitude response, I'm thinking like, okay, if I'm hearing a lot of bass in the room and it's not showing up on a tape, that's telling me that I've got it at the crossover too much low frequency. So I would back it down. I don't know.
It's a speaker problem, not a mix problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, I suddenly started hearing bass on my bass guitar and kick drum on my tapes. And I kept analyzing this. Of course, the live show is priority, but why can't we have a way to document what we just did? And I know it's not verbatim, it's not exact, but that's really where I learned about flat frequency response, at least as my palette. You know, I think a lot of people get that wrong when you say, well, I use flat frequency response or equal amplitude. It's just mean that I tune to that. Now, my result is not flat.
Correct.
Nobody likes to listen to a flat thingy, but let me use the console to color what I do, not the system management. So here it come. After I started getting bass in that, I'd get a bass player in the band. I think David Bowie, as well as George Murray, listened to a couple, and Dennis Davis, the drummer, and he was going, "Wow, man, I've never heard my bass at all." You know, of course, at that time they hadn't even heard show tapes at all. But anyway, he was real impressed with it. So it became a norm for me, not just something I experimented. It was a norm, and I remember. As I continued doing this to a couple other tours, and it was out with Linda Ronstadt, and I'd recorded, and I had felt that I had executed pretty well. And so I had mentioned this to the band, and we did. And we got on Linda's bus, and we all went to the back of the bus in the cove in the back. Now, imagine this, that I am sitting here, try to put yourself in this seat. And I've got Linda Ronstadt sitting here. I've got Peter Asher, her manager.
And Peter Asher's in there going to listen to this, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
On the other side of me.
Pressure's
and
on.
The rest of the band is in the rest of the cove. And I'm sitting there going, oh my, what have I done? Too late now to back out of this, you know.
Right.
Let's play this recording. So I play it, and they listen a little bit, and Linda goes something like, well, where's the guitar? And, well, it'll be there tomorrow night.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. It'll be there tomorrow night. I mean, I could have gone as a long-term excuse, and, you know, it probably was that I was just riding a direct line to his guitar amp, and it's just pinning me. And so therefore it's not in the mix because I'm hearing it straight up.
Yeah.
And, so what a learning experience that was. I mean, but as we went through some things, the band were kind enough that at least my thing was permissible and satisfactory, I guess, that, but they would start pointing out some things to me, which was priceless. You know, you're having the actual musicians say, I'm playing this part and so-and-so is playing this part.
Yes.
And when those are locked in, they form a part. Now, as a front of house mixer that never spent any time with the artist in that manner, would never know that. You'd never know that. I don't care how many times you listen to the album and you try to reproduce it. There's a lot of information that we can gain from the artists themselves. So each group thereafter, this is by the time I'm on the road independently, 1980, and that was with Jackson Brown's Holdout tour. I would find somebody who would listen with me almost every night. And it wouldn't always be Jackson. Jackson would listen every once in a while, but then Bob Glob would listen with me, and it kind of varied around. And it's just great to take the heat. I mean, at the same time, once I got the frequency response thing figured out, we again, just explain to me your viewpoint of what should match. again, it's not a, some of these show tapes from some of these gigs could be live records, but they were few and far between. But then again, Pink Floyd, it was John Caron, and I don't know if I could have done that without him. I mean, to the degree that I felt I had it down was so much his credit, and he would listen with me. We'd listen to a couple of gigs a week out of a 4-gig week, at least a couple, and he had such an amazing awareness of the Pink Floyd library and every album where it was recorded, who played on it, who played what on it. He just had this amazing knowledge about it. And he would point this out to me very clearly. And then at the same time, he said, man, what you got going on that vocal sound is incredible, and what did this are you doing on the guitar? This is great. Now, okay. Now, if I combine all of these forces, we should have something pretty good here. And it was just that. And so to say a certain part or chorus, the hook line, of course, is one thing. The hook line is obvious, but then it comes into, like I said, these layerings of the pad, and wow. And then also in sitting back and traveling with the band, which is when I went independent. If I was going to go independent, I'm traveling with a band. So
Right.
The deals that I made with the artist management, I would say that right up front, that I want to travel with the band, and I never had any resistance whatsoever, never. And countless amount of groups that I did with. And so, some of them just don't want to listen to show tape. They just don't want to listen to it, and others do. But when we have that time and exchange these ideas, that mix, that delivery out front of serving that cake gets bigger and better and bigger and better and bigger and better. And I don't know that I've ever been able to really transfer that to anyone else. I mean, it's a highly, like I said, just don't agree with the show tape thing. And I think it's the way you manipulate your system. And so as I would come to learn more and more about the physics of sound and dealing with this, I basically tune the PAs out to an equal amplitude response with pink noise. And I look at it just as monitors in a studio, in fact, I look at pink noise like a video person looks at color bars.
Right.
And when they play color bars and then they edit their movie and then they play it back, they've got a pretty good idea that they've done it on a standard notation. So if somebody has a TV that's least calibrated, it should look the same. You got to have some reference. So to me, pink noise in audio is color bars in video. So I run the pink noise, and I'd have so many engineers of companies now, and I'm working with other companies, audio analysts, Claire from time to time, Sound Image, on and on. Their engineers do not use the pink noise method, or they might have one. In fact, I'd have to ask for an analyzer a lot of times, and because you didn't have them on your cell phone then.
Right.
So I would balance this thing out, and I would end up reducing their low end energy. And a lot of the engineers that I'm working with, they're saying, Buford, it's really not meant to. I said, no, just wait with me just a little bit, and we'll see. And another method that same method, but another illustration of it, were a good friend of mine, Mauricio Ramirez, who does seminars for Meyer Sound.
Yep.
And he and I worked several gigs together that were showcases. And it was the perfect thing that whenever Mauricio, I trusted him completely. I think he's one of the smartest brains out there in knowing how to set up a PA. And so he would set it all up. I don't even get myself involved with that. I'm concentrating on getting my board set up, my console set up, dealing with the music, talking to the band. What do they got going on up here? Who's playing what? How loud are you? Whatever. So when it's time to make all this work, I go out and Magoo says, well, here, I think I got it. And he shows me the response. I says, that looks really good. And then I do play some music, and then that I'm familiar with. And then I tell him this, which he loved, and I think that it's really something you ought to give a try. I tell him, as I'm listening to music now in this equal amplitude response tuned PA, I say put a filter at 3K, down 2 dB. I'd say the Q2, but don't engage it. Now go down to 250, put a filter in there, and have it +4, but don't engage it. And he's kind of looking at me strangely, like, oh, don't engage it. Well, I'm kind of doing some forward thinking here.
Right.
And because I'm not going to change that EQ from a flat frequency response. And sorry, I don't mean this demeaningly, it's just commonly, but Steely Dan, to play Steely Dan and then let that dictate what my PA tuning is. Well, if Steely Dan was playing that night, fine, I'd use Steely Dan.
That's great.
They're not playing. So, and now the band comes out for sound check. Now I'm hearing the real thing that I'm working with.
Right.
And then I look over at him and I said, go ahead and engage that filter at 250. And so he engages it as whatever instrument I'm working on. Or I see a combination of instruments now and blend. I probably wouldn't do it until they're actually playing. That I'm now saying, yeah, engage that filter I told you at 250. He clicks it in. And I said, yeah, that works. Take it down 3 dB instead of 4, whatever. And there we go. And it just blew him away. He hadn't seen that quite approach to it. And I'm going, now I know when I got my band. So you probably heard of me mixing Faith Hill in a truck, in the back of the truck.
Yep.
I did that for, a lot. I don't know, I'd say 70 to 80 gigs. Of course, I was with her 6 years, and we traveled year round. So when it got to that point, and I listened to her tapes with Gary Carter. Gary Carter was the band leader, steel guitar player in Faith Hill's band at that time period, This Kiss and all those other hits she had. And Gary, again, was great. He just nailed it. And telling me what instruments are doing what, try to get the blends of these doing this and that. And when you do that, you do it collectively. It's not the Buford Jones way. This is us. This is Faith Hill. This is all of us that do it. And that is so much more satisfying and gratifying to the mixer when you know we've done it our way. Not my way, we've done it our way.
That's right.
So Gary would go through all the things with me, and we did the same thing. I set up in the truck. I talked about it to the crew enough to where, just bulling in the back of the bus on a ride, and I talked about mixing in isolation. I know it can be done. I did it with Jackson Brown on only a 1 gig a few years before, and it worked out really well. Just wasn't any other place to sit, and I mixed him from a dressing room, and it went extremely well. And then when I go here with Faith, we actually do this. And when I played it back the first night, we had recorded it. In fact, Tim McGraw was, I don't think they got married yet. No, they hadn't gotten married yet. But he was there, and he came in the truck when I was mixing. And so that'd make you sit up straight.
Sit up straight. Yep, that's right.
And I know Tim McGraw standing over your shoulder listening to his wife. But no, he was nothing but complimentary. And he said, I'm going to walk outside and listen out there. He had a little ball cap or something. So it's an outdoor gig. And he walked out there and he came back in. He says, man, it sounds good out there. It sounds good in here. And I said, well, that's all I need to know. And that's great. So we was doing that. And then the next day, that was the first day they tracked. The next day, we're set up in the grandstands of an enormous fair, state fair somewhere. And I had got everything set up. And when the band came in, I had queued up that tape from the night before. And I had just enough craziness in me to go to Faith and the band. I said, if y'all want to come hear this, I'm going to play it in the PA. And you can hear what we did last night. And they're kind of going, no, just come on out and sit with me. And they did, and I sat out there in the bleachers with them, and then I, with a walkie-talkie, tell the guy in the truck to play track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we wouldn't play the whole thing, just bits, and I'd stop them. And I made the point of sitting right next to Faith. And so we played this, and certain things I'm already hearing that I want to hear more of, and they're not there. And I go, oh, the keyboard's going to hammer me,
Yeah.
da. Oh, that's fine. It's fine to take criticism. You're not going to be perfect all the time. But anyway, we play it, and Faith looks over at me, and she says, this is what she says straight up. I'm going like, oh man, is she plane ticket home, or what is she going to do to me? And she said, listen, where you've got my vocals sitting in the verses is really nice. Keep that level. But in the choruses, push it up. I'd really like it to stand out in the choruses, even though it wasn't done on the record that way, and then bring it back down on the next verse the way you have it there. Wow. This is what we're talking about. Yeah. This is what I'm talking about, man. You know, when you've got it straight from the entertainer's thought process of the way it should be. And I'll tell you what, if I was mixing Faith Hill tonight at a gig somewhere, that song, whatever it was, would have the vocal up in the chorus. It's like I didn't have to write that down. It's just embedded. And,
has that collaborative effort, you know, there's a lot of guys that don't work like that these days. In fact, I've had a couple of artists, 2 pop stars that like don't want to have anything to do with me. You know,
sometimes it's so hard. Yeah.
It's has that collaborative effort ever backfired on you? Have you ever been in a situation where it's like, oh, this isn't working?
The discussion of listening to show tapes. That's back
just in general, a collaborative effort where, like, you know,
to be too much now about everything.
Well, you know, it's like anything, and the times that we're going through right now is a good example of that. You know, we're hearing so much controversial information, you don't know who to believe.
Right.
So I think that's true in any groups. We all have different feelings and different opinions, and you try to look at where you have maybe a couple of members of the band are saying the same thing and on the same thing, and somebody may be totally off. And there is always the more me.
There's always the 7 different opinions of the more me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that I kind of take with a grain of salt. Okay. But, you know, no, I don't think it ever really backfired that I could remember, just the nail chewing experience of doing it for the first times. And no, I don't mind playing it back because I feel this is what we did last night. You know, the relationship between the mics on stage and then the snake coming out to us, non-digital analog, into the console, that relationship doesn't change from venue to venue to venue.
Correct.
It's only everything beyond that. So I'm going, man, if I send the same mix down, why not? And if I'm going to play a tape in here, as many others do, and then balance the room to that tape, I'm using, showing my age, tape, but music, local music, it just doesn't seem right to me. So that was a no-brainer. It was just a no-brainer, and a huge part of I just noticed my recognition, I think, in the sound industry and career, my jobs, it was a strongly beneficial move. But like Pooch, like you said, it's some musicians just don't want to know anything about it. I think too, some might have a little bit of difficulty getting on the same wavelength as what you're trying to do here.
Right.
You know, they might start really judging themselves, and they might, you know, well, I didn't play good tonight, I don't want to hear that, and I don't want the manager to hear that. I made some mistakes. So, well, I don't know. Maybe in some groups that's the case, but once again, I've been blessed to work with groups that just are phenomenal musicians.
Amazing groups.
I look back, I can't believe it. I think they have a type. I did an album for Mark O'Connor, and if you're familiar with him, that plays violin, fiddle, and
I don't know Mark.
Dixie Dregs he played with for a while.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And Mark was the type of musician of what I'm talking about. You know, we would cut stuff in the studio, and I'm sitting there listening. I said, that's the most amazing solo I've ever heard. And then he wind me back, go over it. I'm going to do it again. I said, wait, that was really good. And he goes, no, I just want to play it differently. It's not that I want to clean up a mistake.
Yes.
I just want to do it differently. Oh, okay. So he plays it again in a different way, and it sounds amazing. I go, well, he's going to take that one.
And then what do you do? How do you decide which one to use?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get so many recordings. So that on Jackson Browne, we used that, and I logged all of these tapes, and I formed in fact, if I could pull it out, I had it sitting around here somewhere with a little floppy disk that I made a program for engineers. I made it for me. I didn't make it to sell it, but I documented all my work, and I documented at the end of the night, the first thing I would do is fill in these little things. And I made this program. It's actually in HyperCard. It came on Macs.
Wow. Yeah.
And,
Right.
And it's like cue cards, and you step through these cue cards. But these cue cards will also send a MIDI command. And so that MIDI command on each song that I select would change all my reverbs and DDLs via MIDI, and that all be set. All I got to do is turn on the synths now or whatever. I'm effects crazy. I love effects, so I put a lot on it. But anyway, I had that down, and that worked quite well. And I think Live Sound, when they first come out, started buying some of them from me, and a lot of them were distributed in Europe, but I don't know where it is now. And I'm not a computer programmer. And once HyperCard stopped, that was the only thing I could do that in, and I never pursued it. But I had so many engineers ask me, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "I made it." I said, "It's just the way I document what I do." So I take it ultra seriously. You know, it's the miles in between these gigs that I'm still pumping. I'm still thinking. You know, what can I do at the next gig to try
That's
to keep
amazing. You know, you had all kinds of technology that you were on the cusp of. You know, that sounds like the very first snapshot technology, and
right.
That's amazing stuff. What about, we were talking about collaboration and relationships, and you talking with band members. You must feel like the fact that you were a musician, that you can communicate with musicians. You know, I always wonder about those engineers out there, and there are a lot out there that aren't musicians, they're technicians. And I always wonder how they can get a result, because how do you communicate with a musician? And so I wonder what your thoughts are about what you would say to somebody like that. Like, should they be going and learning some basic music stuff, or what's your thoughts on all that?
That's a good question. And it's not that we're highly musical. I never really took any music courses. I think just learning musical terms is very good for any sound engineer. And the difference between a verse and a chorus, if you can know the difference between the two. You don't have to get down to the 16th notes and what this means and signature time and all of that. That's where I think musicians bond to you that do speak in that language. And when you go up and, for instance, I think, to make immediate bonding is when you go to a guitar player and you say, "Man, that solo that you were playing on the that song, it's great. The tone might have been a little cutting a little bit for me, but you played amazing solo, but the tone might have been cut a little bit, but maybe that was your intention. Is that right?" And they're looking at you and they go like, "Well, you're listening, aren't you?" Yeah. I just want to make sure it's that way. James Taylor told me, because I'm a finger picker, my dad would only let me play with my fingers. And this is a funny story. And when I started working with James, and I think most people don't realize what an incredible guitar player he is.
Oh man.
And so I'm watching his thumb. We have a case. Road case, a drawer after drawer of every pickup that's ever been made. Right. I mean, everyone is in James Taylor's. So he played a white book. We're trying to try these different pickups, and I could never be satisfied with them. You know, it amplified the guitar, but I'm not hearing his thumb. I'm not hearing the notes the way they should be. And so I said to him one night, I said, "James, I'm having a hard time getting your thumb out and hearing the notes that you're doing." I said, "One is resonant over the other, or I hope there's something we can do." And he says, "You're watching my thumb?" Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
He goes, "Wow." I think from that point on, we were very close friends. And that, I think also that gives them a security blanket that they know that you're watching them like a microscope.
That's right.
And that they're going to do anything for you at that point.
I always tell people, young engineers, if you want to get in with a band, study that band before you show up to even the first time that you meet them. And if you're able to have a conversation like what you just said, before at the first minute that you meet them, when you say, oh, in the chorus, that one little section, they'll be like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Know, you already know about my music, you know? That's the way to get in.
And, you know, even afterwards, you're absolutely right. And add even to that is when the show was over with, man, I beeline it. It was many times I would get to the artist's dressing room before they do. If
Right.
it was really a great night, you know. Now I've been very fortunate to have system techs work with me, and they take care of the console or whatever, so I could leave immediately, and I'd go. I said sometimes I was standing there waiting for them to come in, but share that excitement, especially on nights when you know undoubtedly we did a good show tonight. You know, that's something that they hear a completely different side of the story. It's opinionated a lot. And it's based on, I think, when friends and family go back, or somebody they haven't met before that's in meet and greet. And, oh, you're the greatest thing. It's the greatest show I ever saw in my life. It's the greatest thing I ever saw. They're bombarded with that. You know, like I said, but to go back there and say the excitement, you sang with such great thing. And I was able to really, work the room. And at the same time, not only saying positive things, which of course they want to hear, but maybe we had some feedback that night. And I'm very quick and wanted to stand up and raise my hand. That feedback with me, you know, so don't everybody go searching everywhere for it. It was me.
That's great.
And, and I think I might have been one of you guys to do that. So it's like you go back to the dressing room and you say, hey, I was trying to get your vocal on top, but the proximity of the PA to the stage, it was just very susceptible to feedback, and it got away from me a couple of times. But I'm just trying to keep you vocal. Oh, that's okay. I heard that, but it's no big deal. Where if you say nothing at all,
right?
Well, these things will mount up after a while.
They mount up. They fester.
They mount up, and suddenly you got a plane ticket home, and you don't know why. So it's just being honest. But at the same time, and all that we're talking about, you got to be brief and to the point. And the last thing you ever want to do, I think, in communicating with the artist is try to prove to them that you're qualified to be there.
Nice.
You wouldn't be there in the first place.
That's
if you
right.
You
wasn't
already won that
qualified.
battle. Yeah.
So don't prove yourself. I think in the early days, I thought I had to do that. I just had to keep pushing and pushing, which no, stand there and be quiet, listen. And I could hear two musicians talking, and Billy Payne to Russ Conkle or whatever, and they're saying, you know, hey, in the chorus, I was trying to lock in with what you were doing tonight. I was playing this figure to, you know, lock in with what you was doing. And they're not even saying it to me, but I'm hearing them saying, and I go out to the console the next day at sound check, and I push those things up that I heard them talking about. And wow, yeah, that's cool. And that blends. You keep that in this part of the mix. So that's my mixing different than others. I had the freedom. The artist gave me the freedom. I don't think anybody that enforced or stood over my shoulder, which I think is another no. I'm sorry. I just don't accept that. But that were highly critical. I just don't remember that situation. I think because of the things that we've said, we bring it all out in the open. We show our passion and our desire, but never go to the point. I had a little point there and it went away, but
it's all good.
As things do when you pass 70.
They do when you pass 50.
Yeah, that's right.
We were making them. Yeah, I hate that point. I had something good there.
No, it's amazing. You know, the talking about the collaboration, I think is absolutely right. I think that there are guys that don't, you know, want to talk to the artists and have communication, and I just don't understand that. Like, it doesn't work if you don't.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It'll work for one gig, or, you know, if you're only doing one gig with them, well, fine. But even then, it's still worth going up on the stage and saying, hi, how are you? I'm mixing the sound. Is there anything in particular that you really need out here? If you do that, then when you go and start doing the sound check, then they will work with you. But if there's never any communication, and I've seen this over and over and over and over, you guys have too, and it's a shame. We're all one and one. Jackson Browne was the first one to say to me that, Buford, you're one of the band. And I said, wow. cool. I like that. I said, would you pay me like the band? No,
Where do I get my royalty check?
Yeah.
But you're one of the band, and you're playing music along with them.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to take the technical side of this and put it away. You got 22 other hours of the day to talk about it. Oh, that's what I was getting at a while ago, is talking, which I'm highly against. A manager, I don't care, record producer, whatever, come up to me in the middle of a show, but I make this quite clear at the start of a tour. I tell the crew, my crew, you can put a yellow police tape all around this thing and don't let anybody through.
Nobody.
And
talks
the
to me
reason
while I'm
is, and we've seen this 100 times. You've had people standing over you, and it's like, why?
Yeah.
Tell me, why do you talk to me during the show? That is no different, in my opinion, than right now during the show, you walk up to the stage and start telling the guitar, just walk out on the stage while he's playing.
While he's
Tell
playing.
the guitar something. Yeah, you need to capo up here on the 5th fret. It'd be easy to play the chord formats that you want to play. And then turn around and walk off. And I'm sure the guitar player would look at you and say, why now? That might have been a good idea, but why now?
Why now? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I look the same with managers. I'll talk shop with you 22 hours of the day, but I've got one shot at this band. I do not have a rewind button like they do in the studio. I do not have a stop button. I many times wish I did that. I want to get them to talk back and say, hey guys, stop. Just
Stop.
start it over and I'll nail it. I'll nail the intro this time.
That's
You can't do that live. So that's why I have, and even like I said, whatever it is, if you're going to tell me something that you feel is highly important, you reduce it to only a few words. Well, I was walking around up in the balcony. Well, I went to the left. No, maybe I was on the right side, and from up there, it was, no, what are you telling me? Get it out. I've already missed 2 cues in what you're trying to tell me. Yeah. I missed that, and that upsets me. So let's just talk about it afterwards. But yeah,
we had one manager that both Tater and I worked with together that he knows who I'm talking about right now, he would do that to monitor guys. Like he was practically do the guitar thing, like walk on stage to the guitar player and say,
might even live in the same city I live in.
Yeah, that's right. maybe might have lived in Detroit.
Well, when you I say, I'll take full responsibility. Just hand it over to me. I think the engineers, and as Poochie might mention there too, if you analyze what you're doing before you get in there as much as you can, study it as much as you can, now mix musically and not technically.
Yes.
Musically is
Great
anticipating a guitar solo. You know that it's coming. This guitar solo is coming. Now, what can I do when I push that guitar up? There might be another instrument that I can bring up, a keyboard right underneath his guitar that will enhance his guitar solo. See, that's what I call mixing musically, rather than saying, oh man, this 2K is driving me nuts on the vocal app, whatever, or 5K, I need to get a de-esser. I'd rather just do that tomorrow. What can I do tonight musically? And so it's play music and play this. And when it happens, there's nights I thought I needed a seatbelt to hold me down. I want to dance. I want to get up. I want to enjoy. I can't wait to get backstage and show that excitement to the band. It was Billy Payne again that told me, I remember on the Ronstadt tour, where some nights when I would have a kind of a rough night and I didn't execute the way I wanted to, I might not go back. And my tech would say, what are you bummed out about? And I said, well, it just wasn't a good night for me. And he said, I thought it sounded great. And I said, yeah, but I was waiting to get that guitar solo up. Didn't you hear that? And, no. So, well, yeah, no, come on. And so, but anyway, I get back and it was just very beneficial to me. I don't think I could have got where I got if I hadn't done those things. So it's playing the music. Is showing a passion for the music, but you don't always get that. You working with maybe a band that, I need the work. I've got to take this gig, and then you're out there, and then it's just really tough to get through. I think one for me that was different here. I I was embedded in the California sound for quite a while. And then Prince, I was on the Purple Rain tour for a little while. And then suddenly, after doing several David Bowie tours, and David's real good friends with Iggy Pop, Jimmy Osterberg. And when I went out with Iggy, it was Tin Machine in the background, okay? And I just rolled off of a James Taylor tour.
Oh my goodness, that must have been night and day.
I'm going like, wow, this is different, you know. And so I go up on stage and listen around and what I could bear of it. And I don't mean it really demeaningly, but I'll explain what I mean here. And then so David at that time period in the early 70s was very friendly. He's always been very friendly, but he would just walk the room and talk to us at sound check. Just sit down and talk with anybody. And he'd sit down with me at the console after either second or third day, and he goes, he says, "Buford, what do you think about this band?" And I went, "Oh, David, please don't, please." Don't ask me that. Ask me anything, but don't ask me that. He said, "No, really, I want your opinion. What do you think of my band?" And I says, "Well, I'm having a tough situation, trying to find zero here. You know, trying to find the start.
Right.
I can't even get a kick drum sound. So,
right.
You know, and it's pretty chaotic to me. Not that I say I dislike it. It's just not something I'm used to." Well, I can't remember his exact words, but I remember totally what he said overall, and I thought it was great, and I used it the rest of my life. And he was going, "Yeah," he said, "it's the loudest band I've ever worked with." And I go, "Well, good, okay, we're on the same page."
There we go.
we can talk. And he says, "Yeah, they're really loud," but he says, "You know, there's music that is written with the intention of being chaotic and really rebellious and really out there. And if you try to polish that, then you're doing the wrong thing, because it's not what the listener is expecting to hear. They want the chaos. That's what drove them to it in the first place." And I go, that's a good point. And, you know, it stayed with me. And I went up on the stage and really taking into what he had just told me and listening more to the sounds, and then just reproduce those sounds and try to balance it. It wasn't a big band, so, you know, it's 3-piece. So I go, okay. And then accept that this is Iggy Pop, and I'm delivering Iggy Pop the way that it's meant to be.
It's meant to be. Yeah.
I've got through the rest of the tour fine, no problems, and a great bunch of guys, a lot of fun, and we did real well. See, David was playing keyboards incognito with Iggy Pop. This is what this was. I maybe didn't put that in. It wasn't.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that.
Oh, I thought you meant Tin Machine was opening.
No, I didn't explain it well enough.
Okay.
It was the Iggy Pop tour that had happened. He released an album between some David Bowie records. Wow. So David wasn't on the road. David says, "I'll go out with Iggy and help him." So just promote his new album. And that's what it was. So that's when David asked me about the band and this and that and on and on. So, but
that's amazing. That's amazing. Hey, Buford, we've gone over, in fact, 20 minutes over what we usually do here. And thank you so much. But we definitely want to catch you. We have way more to talk about in our Q&A. Guys, we're going to go to another 40 minutes here with Buford if he's game for it. You know, geez, I mean, you probably answered 2 of the 30,000 questions that we have for you. So we'll try to grab you in the Q&A session. But man, thank you so much for coming, and we so appreciate of your time and your expertise.
All right. So well, my pleasure. My pleasure to be here. And all the listeners are in. Highly encourage you. You're on the right track. If you love music, you have passion for music, and want to have the time of your life, not every hour of the day is like that, but you add up those show times, and it's just priceless when I look back at it all. I wish I could do it again, but
oh man,
thank you for having me on.
Nothing like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Buford. Hey, guys, next week on Wrong End of the Snake, it's George Edwards. George has well over 3 decades of industry experience with a strong background in touring, production management, and business development. He cut his teeth working with legends like Black Flag, Social Distortion, Huey Lewis, Journey, Santana, David Bowie, Motley Crue, to name a few. His stints with Showco, R&R Sound, Morpheus, and as Sound on Stage's general manager for a decade are legendary. In 2009, George founded Delicate Productions San Francisco, where he took the position of GM for 7 years. And now this California native is at Sound Image as general manager North. So look forward to that next week with George Edwards. Hey, we wanted to give a shout out to Kim Hilton at Earthworks. I don't know if you guys noticed, but a few weeks back, she sent these microphones to us, and we think that it's improved our sound quality. So thank you, Kim, and we appreciate you. And if you're looking for good microphones, Earthworks makes some amazing microphones. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. We have had over 500,000 hours of watch time to our channel, and we're very grateful that you've helped to reach this milestone. Thank you. Subscribe and smash like on all of our videos. It makes a difference. Thank you very much. Also, I know you guys are all in it, but, reach out to your local congressmen, your senators, and remind them that our industry is just come to a screeching halt and has been for a year. Any sort of stimulus help that we can get for our industry will help. So contact your local representatives. Go to wemakeevents.org or nam.org, NAMM.org for more information. Also, for help and mental wealth and well-being, go to the roadieclinic.com. That's a really important thing during this time period, is keeping your mental health well. Yes. So that's Roadie Clinic. They're doing a really great bunch of things. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate it. And, stay tuned for this Q&A. We're going to post it in the next few days. More stuff with Buford Jones. All right, guys, take care. Talk to you soon.